Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvara Guratmeti Muchi Veda Vibhagine Vyomavta Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Sedanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Sati Guru Pranatosh Maham Om Shanti 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 Om. Welcome everybody. Nice to meet again with you in Satsang, our Q&A Satsang. Our group became one group. It seems it's nice to have some of us from Europe, some from the USA. So it's happening in our small Sangha. We have a few questions here that I received. Maybe we should begin with the first one I received. It was from Michael. His first question is, does Advaita Vedanta state whether there is a chooser making choice, or does awareness in association with Ishvara, or it is awareness in association with Ishvara that perhaps make the decisions and choice? In this discussion, I think you may also answer whether or not there is free will. So this is the most ancient kind of philosophical discussion there is the question, this question about free will. Is there real free will, or there is no free will? And who is making choice here? So it seems we have a certain power to make choice on a moment-to-moment basis. We know that. We choose every time. We choose whether we're going to eat our breakfast with banana, apple, or whatever, So again and again we choose, but at the same time, we know that we choose against, we choose based on our vasanas. And then some of us may come and say, well, but I don't have much power because I have promised myself that I could not eat banana anymore, and still I have such a craving. And I'm still eating banana, which is no good for me. What kind of free will is that? So, and that's where the whole talk about free will becomes a little tricky, because we have a certain power to choose, and we know that. That's what distinguishes us from all other animals. We can choose intelligently how to respond to the stimulus coming from the field on a moment-to-moment basis. But since we are smart, spiritual, advanced people, we understand that our free will is very limited in the sense that it is being conditioned by our vasanas. And our vasanas, a lot of the time, they are forcing us, compelling us to choose things that I know already it's no good for me. So we all know that one, right? We have been all going through this experience of fighting our vasanas. So the good news is that Ishvara, being the macrocosmic body of all vasanas, supplying our own vasanas to our own personal, private, karmic account, making no mistake about that, he is providing these vasanas for us, but at the same time, we are providing our actions to Ishvara, which is going to become our vasanas, our tendency to act. So what does that mean? It means that we have the power also to change or reprogram our vasana load, because again and again we can act in a way that we're going to provide Ishvara with different set of vasanas that may offset some of the vasanas that I want to work on or bring them down, So, for example, if I have a huge vasana for food, and I know that my cholesterol is high, my sugar level is high, and everything, and I have to avoid certain elements, some food. So I have the power to again and again, being being aware and vigilant and mindful, I have a certain power to say no to that tendency, to that craving, to that addiction to sugar, to that addiction to certain things that are not working for me. So we need to distinguish certain vasanas and know whether this vasana is a good vasana or a bad vasana. And a good vasana is a vasana that brings us closer to our spiritual goal. It's a vasana that elevates us spiritually. So it's a vasana that provides me with a more and more calm and sattvic and focused and clear mental, emotional state. So we need good vasanas because we know that the vasanas are going to somehow condition our subtle body, our mental, conscious mind. So we need good vasanas work for us. So we have a certain power to work with Isvara because, as I said, Isvara is not alone in this game. We provide Isvara with our actions, and Isvara gives back to us our results, our vasanas, also wherever we want to see it. So when Isvara presents us with our results, our life circumstance, or with the tendency to think and act in a certain way, in that moment that he presents us with that, we can always, say, Isvara, okay, no, I'm not going to go and follow this vasana. On the other hand, when Isvara provides us with our life situation, our life circumstance, as our prabhada karma, the results of my previous actions, when it presents me with the results of my actions, I have no way, but I need to take it. So as far as myself as the receiver, in the reception side, receiving the results of my agami karmas and my sanchita karmas when they manifest as prabhada karma, when I'm in the receiver side, I have no free will. What it means? It means that I cannot tell Isvara, no, I don't want these results. I don't want this life situation. I don't want this challenge. I don't want these problems. I don't want this. I don't want that. I want a different life. I want a different circumstance. I want a different experience. No, we don't have any free will in that sense. On the receiver side, we have no free will. But on the responding side, on the side of our human experience as the doer of actions, as the karta, the doer of action, the one that responds to the stimulus of the field, on this side, I have the free will. And we do have the free will in spite of the pressure we get from our vasana load. That is what distinguishes us from all other animals. All other animals have no free will. They are just governed by these programs, by these vasanas, by their nature as a rat, as a cockroach, as a bird, as a fish. Every creature is just responding to the field spontaneously and mechanically and automatically according to their vasanas. And they have no saying, they have no will, no power to do otherwise. But we, being intelligent beings, with a kind of sophisticated intellect, we have the power to choose our response to the field again and again. We can always respond. Okay. So, do we have the free will? Yes. From the jiva standpoint, at the acting side, responding side, not as the receiver. You remember this teaching that there are two aspects of our jivahood. One is the receiver, that is called bhokta. The bhokta is the aspect of the jiva that receives the results of his or her actions. And there is the other aspect of our jivahood, which is the karta, the one who acts out, who responds to the stimuli. Okay? So as the karta, we have a free will. As the Bhokta, the receiver, we have no saying. When we receive, that is faith, that is determinism, that is fatalism, that is destiny. Because we have no say, we have nothing, we cannot send it back. Every situation that comes to us is our situation, and we have no power to say, no, please take it back. Okay? So, but when we respond to the field, repeating myself again, when we respond, we always have the power to choose our response. Okay? In spite of the pressure coming from my vasana load, my tendencies, my predisposition, my propensities to think, feel, and act in a certain way, I still have an intelligent mind that allows me to understand, to connect the dots between those tendencies, those vasanas, my feelings, my thoughts, my actions, and the result of the actions. I can connect the dots and I say, "Oh, it's not working for me. I need to change something here. I have to somehow put up a fight with certain tendencies here." So we have, from the jiva standpoint, there is free will. From the jiva standpoint, from the doer aspect, from the karta aspect, there is a free will. From the jiva standpoint, as the receiver, there is no free will. It's destiny. It's fate. But from Ishvara standpoint, there is no such a thing as jiva's free will, because after all actions are being produced not by the jiva alone. It is just a fantasy in our mind, and we have the power to respond. And the spiritual ignorance of all of us is to imagine that we are really the doer. Total knowledge is to understand that I have a certain power to respond here, I have a power to choose, and the best choice I do here is to choose according and in harmony to Dharma. If I align my actions, my thoughts, my response with the Dharma, the natural laws of the cosmos, and then I'm living a beautiful life which is conducive to spiritual growth. So I have this, but from Ishvara standpoint, we can tell that there is no free will for the jiva, because all actions are being produced by Ishvara's three gunas, the three energies. They are dynamic by nature. They come together to produce the subtle and the gross elements, and then the pranas, and all this body mind complex just dynamically dance, like puppets in the string. That's how we do our actions. But yet there is intelligence in this puppet that can choose. No, I'm going to act according in harmony with the Dharma law, the Dharma field. You know what I mean? So another point to understand is for an action to take place, there are millions of factors. We, the jiva, when we are totally under the spell of ignorance, we believe that we are the actions. But once we become spiritually educated or wise, we understand that my choice, my determination, my decisions is one factor among many factors contributing to a certain action present to the field, to a certain decision I'm doing here. So there are many other factors. And the totality of all these factors is called Daivan. Daivan is another name for Shwara the Lord. Okay? The totality of the factors operating in the field that brings about all the dancing, dynamic actions in all beings, So it's important we understand that Ishvara is doing all of that for us, and he gives us this small power, the power to decide, determine, and choose, which is a very important power that needs to be exercised properly. And with this power, we need to redirect our life towards spiritual growth and moksha and freedom and spiritual elevation. Does that make sense, Michael?
Yes, thank you, Arlinda. That makes sense. It seems like you're saying that there's no choice, or it seems like you're saying that we have choice from where we are, but from a different perspective, it's really more like an imagined choice.
Yes, everything in the immediate is just thought. It's just just energy. Energy is thought. Thought is energy. You know, it's imagination. So it begins with sattva. So everything here is not really real, but we need to live here, you know, harmonizing our lives with this unreal field, so that we can grow in clarity and purification and elevation and so on, so that we can understand our real nature, that which is beyond meat. It's inside, it's in media that we can discover our nature satya. Therefore, we need to act in a certain way, although we know that's not real, everything. From awareness, from consciousness, our true, fundamental, free, independent nature, there's no question of action. We know we don't do anything from that platform. We are just pure light of consciousness, illumining and revealing the field of experience. We don't do anything, and every one of us can follow the logic of Vedanta, and we're going to accept that statement, you know, that we are free of any action. We are actionless, actionless consciousness, you know.
Yeah.
So that is from awareness. From the standpoint of Isvara, the jiva also, you know, is being done, like we say. He's not really doing, he's being done. But from the standpoint of the jiva, on the responding side, there is a certain free will, a certain power to choose that needs to be properly exercised. The goal is to understand our nature beyond media, you know, and then living media, but knowing that we are free from media, you know, that nothing in media is really affecting me. That's what we call moksha.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask if maybe there's a couple people that could be muted, because when you're speaking, like every other word is kind of cutting out.
Is that happening to everybody? No?
Happening to me sporadically.
Just a moment. I'm going to connect my laptop directly to the router here. Okay. So usually that helps the connection. My connection becomes stronger this way.
Arlindo, I have a sort of a follow-up on that point, if you would.
Please.
It seems to me that free will is sort of the more knowledge you have, the more your free will becomes more authentic, because you have without knowledge, you're just sort of reacting.
Yeah.
And so some kind of objectivity helps one act rightly. And you said at some point earlier that some sort of a space is created in the action. A space is created between the knower and the actor.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Well, there is always a space between the stimulus and the response, and we know that by first-hand experience. Sometimes we are compelled to respond, you know, automatically, mechanically. But if we really slow down, we will understand that there is always a space, you know. So we need somehow to make that space in a way that we can really, exercise our free will in that window of time, rather than being pushed to react, to respond mechanically, and a lot of the times violently, emotionally, violently, or something like that. There is always a space. The question is, the more we see ourselves objectively, as you said, the more we can understand that space between every stimulus and every response that I bring to the field. And this, Lynn, is this is something that with time. So let me just open another diversion here. Is like what is free will? Because free will, the best exercise of free will, this power we had to choose, is the and you said that the more knowledge we have, the better the choice we make. Okay, you begin this interaction now saying the better, the more knowledge, the better my response. Yeah? So what is the free will? But the choice I make to live my life in total harmony with the Dharma field. You understand? So the best exercise of the free will is to choose to live one's life in total conformity to Dharma. So by doing that, at the beginning, maybe we need to again and again press the button, pause, before we can respond. But then gradually, we begin developing good vasanas. And these good vasanas, they are vasanas now that are based on Dharma, no longer based on my rajasic and tamasic likes and dislikes. Now I have good vasanas in my causal body. So to the extent that I have more and more good vasanas in my causal body, so this response, to respond in harmony with Dharma, which is the best possible exercise of free will, they become more and more spontaneous. Because we want to live a spontaneous life. We don't want to be all the time there, pausing and stopping and excuse me, I go to the bathroom here, and then I just lock myself and I think, now how am I going to respond to this situation, So life does not give us that much opportunity to pause every time. Of course, sometimes when things are really boiling in, the best thing is to tell a lie and just go somewhere until one calms down, and then we recover our intellectual discrimination faculties and emotional body. We calm down and then we say, okay, now I can talk, now I can decide, now I can respond. So it's better. It's always good to break every time that we see that we are kind of boiling, either because I'm about to respond violently, emotionally violently, or because I'm about being pushed around by an old habit that became an addiction or a craving, or something like that. So what is free will? But the best exercise of free will, but this ability of responding to the fields according to Dharma, and this with time it becomes more and more spontaneous, because life has to be lived spontaneously, and it takes some time, but slowly. So I often say that this spiritual knowledge has to grow roots in the causal body, so that we spontaneously live from that platform of knowledge, of spiritual knowledge. You understand? We have good vasanas now at our disposal, working for us. Does that cover your point, Lynn? Yeah.
So in a sense, are you saying that we need a vasana? First, we have to recognize that disquiet or some signal to us that something is not dharmic. So you have to build a vasana even just to make the pause and to step back, to develop the space
Yeah,
and to be objective.
yeah.
So it's a discipline.
It's a build-up of knowledge, as you said.
Knowledge.
More than
Life.
anything, again and again, submitting your mind to the teachings and studying, contemplating, reflecting, resolving doubts like we are doing now, and then gradually making this knowledge more and more solid and clear. Our knowledge is the key. You understand?
Yes, I do.
And then it grows, and then it becomes clear, and then it goes into our unconscious mind, and then it becomes spontaneous for us. It's a gradual process, all based on again and again going back to knowledge, applying. There is one question that's going to come, which is about nididhyasana, how to apply this knowledge on a moment-to-moment basis. Let's see if we have enough time. So Michael has another question. Should I constantly start turning the mind inward now as a daily practice? And if so, how exactly does one do that from moment to moment? So it was, his first question was about free will. And then somehow Michael got the idea that he needs to turn his mind inwardly. So what do you mean by that, Michael?
Well, I've read that a few times in James's book, and I don't really know what it means in terms of how to do it.
Okay. Okay, because the proper language here is to turn the mind towards knowledge, because the whole idea of turning the mind inwardly, it sounds experiential. It sounds like going into silence, going into deep meditation, going to samadhi, and so on. You know, or it could be also. It could give us the idea that we need to go into the famous inquiry. Who am I? Who am I? Bring the mind inwardly to understand what is consciousness, what's the mind, and so on. I mean, all of this has its spiritual value, you know. But when we come to Vedanta, we want our introspection, because you was talking about how to begin introspecting, because the life of the samsari is all about extroversion, you know. It's all about the mind, the sense organs connecting with the respective objects in the field and having experience and all the time, you know, interacting with the field and so on. So we want to somehow gradually to control these sense organs, you know, control them rather than let them run like crazy, you know, into the field. We want to control them, and then we want to turn like the turtle, you know, remove its sense, like it says in the Gita, you know, remove its sense organs every time that it no longer wants to go into the field. We have to have the power to remove the sense organs, contain and retain our organs of action, and then keep our mind relaxed, in peace, and not engaged in all its desires and aversions, you know. And then we can talk in terms, okay, and then you begin introspecting. So introspect can be as you go to the silence or start meditating on a symbol of the self. Any kind of introspection is a sort of sadhana that calms the mind and controls one's thoughts, you know, and all of that has its spiritual value. But to turn the mind towards knowledge is the best possible sadhana for a Vedantine in seeking moksha, you know. Well, you need to bring the mind again and again to the knowledge as presented by the scriptures. And this knowledge, again and again, is going to be there, neutralizing or canceling wrong notions, ignorance, you know, wrong identification, wrong concepts about what I am, and so on. So the best kind of sadhana is turn the mind towards the knowledge as presented by the scriptures of Vedanta, and keep that as a daily practice. Yeah, and one does that exactly like we are doing. You know, you get to your scriptures, you listen to the audios, you watch the videos, you read it again, the book of Ramji, go into other books, you know, and again, and clear your doubts. So this is this is the only shortcut there is to self-knowledge and moksha. And people want a shortcut that does not exist, because this is the only shortcut. You know, just try to produce a state of empty mind. Let's say is a long road to self-recognition and moksha. You know, it feels good, but the moment that we suspend our effort, the mind again modifies, the gunas start operate, the mind modifies, and we are back jumping from one object to another, you know. So we want knowledge because knowledge is the only remedy. That's the point here. But as I said, turn the mind inwardly is a good beginning, okay? Because you want to disconnect from the world, you know, our desires, the aversion, everything that compels us to go into the rat race, as we call in the USA. So we need to control the mind and the sense organs and the organs of actions, and then begin introspect, begin contemplate, meditating, you know, and slowing down and controlling our thoughts, you know, and so on. So this is a good sadhana of yoga, you know, meditation. But it should not stop there. The moment that the mind is pacified, we need to apply knowledge to the mind, because only knowledge is going to really address the fundamental problem of the individual. You understand? So Mark has another question that says, could you explain in detail? No, we still have good time. Could you explain in detail the nididhyasana stage? So as we know in Vedanta, I mean, we are all advanced students of Vedanta, as I understood. So we all know that Vedanta goes in stage. The first stage is to be introduced to the knowledge. So we need to listen. We need to expose our minds, submit our minds to the scriptural knowledge by reading books, by listening to the teachers, and so on. So this is the first stage, and we need to do that with a certain mental, emotional attitude, so that we benefit from that kind of listening. Otherwise, we're going to just reject everything that is not my spiritual condition, in my spiritual program, and then there is no benefit if I reject everything. So the first stage is to listen with a certain attitude, okay? Open, flexible mind. So the second stage is reflecting and contemplating upon what has been heard. And in this process of contemplating and reflecting, we need to really bring up our doubts, as we are doing today, bring up our doubts and resolve them, and really resolve them, go to the bottom and resolve them to the best of our ability. Because doubts, they are going to produce what we call vague, abstract, imprecise knowledge, self-knowledge, you know. So this knowledge has to be so clear, because if it is vague and abstract, what happens is our confidence in those statements of the Upanishads is not going to be strong. We're going to say, yes, I believe I am limitless consciousness and so on, I'm already free. But underneath that layer, there will be some feeling that, well, but, you know, I'm not really sure. I don't have a really strong, firm conviction about what the scripture is saying here. Why? Because I have doubts that were not really addressed and resolved. Doubts that I pushed under the carpet, doubts that I'm not really aware yet. Therefore, we need to bring up our doubts, our suspiciousness. You understand? It's a very important part of the process to go through our doubts. So this is all part of what we call manana, contemplation and reflection. And then we have the third stage, which is nididhyasana. And Mark is asking, so can you explain in detail the nididhyasana stage? And then he says, the way I understand it is using the knowledge and the different Vedanta teaching on an ongoing basis when doubts or negative or even positive emotions, desires and fears appear in the mind and disturb us. The way I understand it is using the knowledge and the teachings on a moment-to-moment basis when doubts are negative or even positive. So we want to use this knowledge at all times. And Mark made a good point here. Even when you enjoy a good time, even when you enjoy positive vasanas, when you enjoy good punya, we need to not only have this knowledge alive in our minds when we are going through crises and adversities or negative feelings and emotions and thoughts, but we want this knowledge to be alive in our mind even when we go through a good experience, a good karma, punyas, positive and beautiful states and so on, even for blissful, spiritual, mental conditions such as epiphanies and samadhis and so on. We need this knowledge there and reminding us, okay, it's a good experience, but this is just an object that comes and goes, comes and goes. So we need to have this knowledge alive at all time on a moment-to-moment basis. This is nididhyasana. Nididhyasana is often presented as application of knowledge. Literally, it means assimilation of knowledge. But assimilation of knowledge is not far from application of knowledge because you only apply it on a moment-to-moment basis to the degree that you really understood and you assimilate and retained it in your mind. So now the knowledge is alive. And then we do nothing but again and again keeping this alive knowledge available to us on a moment-to-moment basis. So, of course, when we experience mental, emotional discomfort, and then we know for sure that ignorance is operating, because I am experiencing the side effect of ignorance, which is psychological, emotional, mental suffering. Then I know for sure. But as Mark has pointed out, even when I'm not experiencing negative thoughts, feelings, and emotions, when that light, bam, 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 is not really going on and off, but things are really cool and I'm having a good time, even in those moments, it's important that we understand that our goal here is to be established as the knower of all experiences, the seer of all experience, as the experiencer, the perceiver, never the perceived or the experienced. We want to be firmly established as the light that reveals all objects of experience, that illumines and reveals everything. We need to, again and again, do this discrimination and remain established in awareness as awareness, in consciousness as consciousness. Okay? The seer, the perceiver, the knower, the experiencer, and so on, which is something other than the mind. Okay? The mind is not apart from consciousness, from us, but consciousness is much more than the mind. Okay? So this constant application of this knowledge, which is not much different than the satya-mithya discrimination, or discrimination between that which is eternal and never change from everything that changes. This is continuous application of self-knowledge, is nididhyasana. So this nididhyasana can be done on different levels as well. It can be done on karma yoga level, all the spiritual knowledge, in respect to Isvara, Jiva, and Jagat. All this knowledge, again and again, we need to apply this knowledge in certain moments in our life as a good karma yoga as well. We see sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to do the nididhyasana from the standpoint of jnana yoga, because again and again to establish myself as consciousness and I'm free from everything, it requires a mind that is very subtle for doing that kind of subtle discrimination. Therefore, we need the nitya knowledge, the Ishvara knowledge, the karma dharma knowledge alive in our minds as well every time that we experience some circumstances, that are being difficult for me to handle it in the sense that I'm maintaining my discriminating power, maintaining my spiritual knowledge and responding from that platform of karma dharma knowledge. So we need again and again to use these tools, either from the ultimate truth of jnana yoga, as well as the karma and dharma yoga platform of knowledge. So Mark goes on to say that the problem with this application of knowledge in a moment-to-moment basis, an ongoing basis, is that these disturbances always appear when the mind is under the influence of rajas and tamas. So I understand Mark saying that the difficulty in this nididhyasana is that when we most need it nididhyasana is when we have rajas and tamas in operation. And when rajas and tamas afflict the mind loses its discriminating power. The mind becomes disturbed. Yeah. So he says the problem is that this disturbance appear when the mind is under the influence of rajas and tamas, and therefore more or less incapable of doing this nididhyasana, which is a fact as well. It is a fact. That's why I have said before, when the mind is too much disturbed due to excessive rajas and tamas, rajasic and tamasic vasanas, tendencies. When the mind is like that, it's easier for us to apply the karma dharma yoga knowledge, to apply the knowledge of Isvara, the field, and the relationship, take things, as prasad, take things with a certain attitude of gratitude, and again knowing it's my karma. I know some crisis is happening now, some situation that it's choiceless. I did not choose it consciously, but it's my karma. Therefore, I know that Ishvara makes no mistake. I know there is some learning here for me. This is all Ishvara knowledge. It's all karma. I know there is some really important learning here for me. So I take it as prasad, and I'm interested in learning something here. I'm not here to have a good time. I'm here to grow, right? So all this knowledge, when the mind is more disturbed, it's fundamental to minimize disturbance, because to try to apply the ultimate jnana yoga knowledge and say, no, I'm the seer, I'm the knower, and so on, and I'm the subject, free principle, and nothing is touching me here, nothing is affecting me here. I'm losing my house, but I'm not being affected. I don't get affected because I'm consciousness. I'm beyond everything, but they are evicting me. They are taking away my house because they don't serve my mortgage. So when we have that kind of situation, it's tough to apply this ultimate teachings. Therefore, it's easier, it's much more practical to say, all right, so this disturbs my mind. and I take it really in a way that, it's tough, it's hard, and I have to take it somehow with my karma yoga spirit and know that there is something for me here. And I don't mind, because I know that it's the proper karma. It's happening for me. If it's happening, it's right. And therefore, I take with elegance, with good spirit, try to learn the best possible, and so on. So both of these angles are different angles of nididhyasana, application of spiritual knowledge. You understand? So we just need to see. But I understand your point and your frustration, because when the mind is like that, it's difficult to have this knowledge alive to us. And then what do? We run to our books. We run to our outs, to our videos. We say, "Oh my God, I have been away from my Vedanta sadhana for 1 week now, and now I begin to experience the effects. I'm being more easily disturbed, and this and that." What does that tell me? It means that I need to keep doing my homework on a daily basis. Keep it fresh, keep it alive, so that it's always good serving me, on a daily basis. So we don't have any other option. That's the best course of action here, In spite of the frustration, the person who's too much frustrated will draw the conclusion that, oh, Vedanta does not work, This is only intellectual. No, it's not intellectual. Only it begins at the intellectual level, and then it gradually transforms the individual to the extent that this knowledge is going to become one's life. It's going to become spontaneously applied in one's life. It's going to be working for oneself on a moment-to-moment basis. It's a reality. It's possible, but it requires work. It requires some work. Does that cover?
Yeah, thanks, Arlen. Yeah, thank you, Arlinda. That's great. It really helps. When you say, apply the karma yoga spirit, absolutely. Yeah, I hear that. But that also takes a degree of sattva in the mind. If the mind's heavily disturbed, you also need a certain percentage of sattva in your mind to even apply that at that moment of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always a catch-22 thing. I mean, how about everybody in the world, the spiritual world, trying to become a meditator? And they want to sit and meditate, but in order to meditate, you have to have a meditative mind. But you are meditating because you want to develop a meditative mind. But in order to begin meditating, you have to have a certain degree of a meditative mind. So we need to begin somewhere. We begin from the grosser level of sadhanas, and then gradually we move into a subtler level of sadhana. So if we need meditation first, we meditate on a grosser level, like Osho Rajneesh used to offer us all this dynamic, active meditation, because we have so much stress. So we begin meditate on a denser, grosser level until the mind becomes more subtle. And then we can do some meditative sadhanas to calm the mind before we go into application of self-knowledge, okay? So, I mean, we can even go and do the Hatha Yoga, to do all those exercises and those postures that calm down the body-mind complex. That makes it easier for the body-mind complex to follow Vedanta, to apply Vedanta, to study Vedanta. All of these are preparatory kind of sadhanas that somehow supports and sustains our main goal, our main project, which is knowledge. So we need to grow. We need to grow from a good foundation. We need to be working on all the levels.
Yeah.
Including some psychological level to some of us as well. So does anybody have anything else to say, or can we move into something else? So we have 6 minutes left. Shall I go into the next questions, or we need to end our meeting soon?
Let's do another question.
Yeah, what's the next question?
Shall we do? Okay. The other question is from a guy called Dave.
Oh no.
I don't know him. There is so much ritual associated and as a part of Hinduism. Yes, there is a lot of ritual in the Vedic culture. So the Vedic culture begins with rituals, begins with the relationship between the jiva and God, and they do that in ritualistic kind of manner. This relationship of honoring and revering and bringing God into account and offering something and asking something. At the beginning, the jiva wants to ask protection, ask this, ask that, and mostly material kind of goals. So there is a lot of that in the Karma Kanda, which is the huge first block of the Vedas. More than 80% of the Vedas is about actions to gain a result of actions, as we know. So there is a lot of that in the Vedic culture. In the Western approach, embraced Tantra, Kirtans, Pujas, and some other practice. So I understand Dave saying that in the Vedic culture, in the Hinduism, there is a lot of rituals. In the West, there are more like New Age kind of activities around bhajans and kirtans and pujas, and a little bit like that, so that people can still express their kind of devotional temperament towards something, towards God, towards a principle, So kirtans around Krishna or any other God, and so on. So there is a lot of these things in the West. We chant before and after our talks. Yes, we chant. This is our small kind of ritual. We are just acknowledging our sampradaya. We acknowledge Isvara as the first guru, and then Shankaracharya in the middle, and then our teachers at the end. So we acknowledge the entire sampradaya. We give thanks to the sampradaya and to everybody that has worked to keep it alive, so that we can nowadays still be drawing benefit of it. So we give thanks, and we not only give thanks, but we always ask the Lord Isvara to help us by removing the obstacles that could prevent the full assimilation of the meaning of this scriptural knowledge. So we do all of that mindfully, we are just invoking and asking for Isvara to help us in our endeavor here. And then Dave comes to his question, which is, what is the role of devotion or bhakti-yoga? What's the role of devotion or bhakti-yoga when Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita directs Arjuna to practice karma yoga for his action, for his practice, to create a more sattvic, rich life where jnana yoga can take root? Can you explain better the last part of your question? Where jnana yoga, you mean to say there should be a period there, and then where jnana yoga can take root, or it's all in one sentence? What's the role of devotion or bhakti yoga when Krishna says to Arjuna to be a karma yogi? Yeah? To create a more sattvic, rich life where jnana yoga can take root. Okay, I understood. Okay. So what is the fundamental question of David here is, where is the role of devotion? So where is the devotion when Krishna tells Arjuna to be a karma-yogi, and act following his Swadharma, dedicate its actions to the Lord, and with the clear understanding that he has no power or control over the results, with the clear understanding that everything is Isvara, the Lord, and he presented Arjuna with the knowledge about Satya, saying that you can do these actions because nothing's going to hurt anybody here, because everybody's self, and the self cannot be hurt, cannot be killed, cut, burned, or anything, It's the substratum of everything. Nothing can touch us. So just take it easy and do what you have to do here. So what is the role of devotion in Krishna telling Arjuna to act like that, Well, the devotion is the underlying kind of spiritual attitude through all the stages of one spiritual process. Devotion is the most basic and the underlying principle that pervades or accompanies everyone in one's entire stage of evolution. So as a karma yoga, we need to act out with a certain spiritual attitude, devotional, as with the spirit of worshiping Isvara, understanding that the Lord is the one producing all these actions, and every one of those participants in the field need to follow one's own dharma as well, the universal dharma of the field. So we need to harmonize and follow our swadharma, the situational dharma, and the universal dharma, and live in harmony, even if certain actions appear to be non-spirit, such as fighting a war to reestablish dharma. So Arjuna was confused, and Krishna was trying to make a point. Do it. Go into the field and kill and be killed, and do that in full devotion. So this is devotion. This is bhakti-yoga. Bhakti-yoga is not an independent yoga, but it is an attitude that is common towards all the stage, from the denser kind of stage of sadhanas until the most subtle and refined sadhanas. There must be this devotional attitude that begins with, I'm devoted to a certain guru, and then when we grow, we are devoted to the Lord Isvara, represented by different deities, And then when we become even more mature, we are devoted to consciousness, to awareness, to Brahman alone, knowing that everything is only Brahmana, appearing as name and forms. But all through this process, from the most immature kind of exercise of devotion until the most refined and subtle exercise of devotion, this attitude remains. It needs to remain. We need to live our lives always bringing Isvara into account until we bring Isvara and Brahman into account. So when we bring Brahman into account, it not means that we just keep Isvara off the picture. No. Because we are dealing with two orders of reality, of the one non-dual reality. So there is Mithya and there is Satya pervading the entire meeting. So we have Brahman and we have Isvara. Brahman pervades Isvara, and we better bring both of these principles into account and live our life in harmony with those, I don't know if this is clearly understood. But this is devotion. Devotion has to go through all levels of understanding, from the denser until the most subtle. We need to be devoted to God, Isvara 1 or Isvara 2, but we need to understand God, the Nirguna God and the Saguna God. Saguna Isvara and Nirguna Isvara need to be understood, and we need to live our lives, bring them, these two principles, into account. So where is the role of devotion? Devotion has a very, very fundamental, important role. Without devotion, some people may get self-knowledge, but the arrogance of the ego is not really dissolved. The sense of ownership, authorship, doership. In other words, this egocentric attitude or notion that I am the doer, I'm the controller, and so on, it still survives. Why? Because we did not bring Isvara into account to begin with. When we bring God into account, the ego immediately has to put up with the fact that we are totally dependent on Isvara. You understand? The jiva is totally dependent on Isvara. The jiva, to be more truthful to the jiva, is a notion, a fiction, like Michael said. Okay? It's an important fiction. It's an important notion. And you need to work through, work from that notion. I, the individual here. We need to grow from there. But this ego is going to remain, ignorant. It remain arrogant, believing that he himself has knowledge, that him himself or herself now is enlightened, and he himself or herself now has the mission to enlighten the world or whatever, And this arrogance, they remain there. Why? Because it never really brought the Lord into account and understood our dependence on Isvara for everything. So only when we understand this dependence, and then our ego gets to its proper proportion, and then we understand the ego here is just an agent that helps me to respond to the field. It's a functional thing, and I want to give my life to Isvara. I want to be an instrument of Isvara. I align my life to the Lord, and then I just act in harmony with the cosmic law of the Lord, and then I'm good to go. And my ego, this sense of doership that is so important that it is cancelled and neutralized, gradually goes and go. You understand? To the degree that again and again I understand my limitation as a karta, as a doer of actions, and my dependence on Isvara, and then my ego, it's reduced to its small proportion, and then it's easily handled and manageable. I can manage from my conscious state, as awareness. I can see my ego objectively and make good use of this ego responding to the field, as an instrument of response. So devotion is very, very important, has a fundamental role. And the problem is that in the West, most people do not like this notion of being a devotee of Isvara, of the Lord. They rather like the idea of being a devotee of a guru. They like the idea of having a guru and a sangha that, that somehow gives them some hope that some miracle may happen and grace falls upon me, and I get this transcendental enlightenment and so on. So people, they fall for this kind of Shaktipat environment, so for this energy field, and they give everything into it because they want to feel good. But we are not concerned about feeling good. We like to feel good rather than feel bad. But we know that in order to feel good, we need to be properly established in knowledge, understanding. Understand the Mithya and Satya, both. This is a complete body of knowledge, So devotion is fundamental, and it's and that's why I have been hammering so heavily on this and making effort to bring God again into the picture and make people understand that God is good. Like they say in the USA, God is good all the time. Right? Anything else, Dave?
Well, actually, we're over time now, so either it could be a topic that I could see if others are interested to pursue, or it's something I could discuss with you individually. So
Yeah, also, however you prefer, and we can carry on this discussion in our next Q&A.
yeah, and so I mean, others can give you feedback in terms. They don't do it now, but if they want to do more, my thinking is that I understand what you're saying, and but I have a tendency to my notes was I have a tendency to you know, as I study or as I learn more and try and get more, develop more knowledge or develop or become less ignorant, let's say, I have a tendency towards rejecting all things that are in mithya, all the actions and all the things that I see going on, the spiritual materialism and all that. So I'm trying to reconcile really how to maybe look at these things differently and see the value, and in this case, see the development of devotion as part of karma yoga, as an element of karma yoga,
Yeah.
that I can really, I can accept and welcome and embrace so much of what's going on around me.
Yeah.
And at the same time, but a lot of it just has to do with my attitude towards it or my perspective on it, and when I'm looking at the ability to develop devotion and a commitment to seeing all things as God or as the Lord, in all my actions, and so going to a kirtan can be good. I just have to go clear with my intention, and that intention may not be the same as the leader's intention.
Yeah,
The leader may talk about what they're doing, and it's going to be different from what my perspective and where I'm coming from. So
totally.
That's for discussion if people are interested in you and I can talk.
Yeah, I understand better now where you're coming from. And just to conclude, the karma yoga. So karma goes for action, and yoga go to a certain attitude that action has to be presented. So karma, dharma means appropriate, timely action, meaning to say appropriate, dharmic, timely action. Okay, sattvic action. And yoga, it goes beyond, because one may be like, I understood the logic of karma yoga, the scriptures, I understand the logic behind the Dharma scriptures. So I have the rationale covered, but I don't have any feeling of devotion. Devotion is the other side of the coin. Devotion is a spirit of gratitude for the opportunity that was given to us to live this beautiful life, and having Isvara doing everything to us, to our body, our systems, our mind, making us walk and hear and keep our mind healthy. Isvara does everything. Isvara provides the meals in our table every day. Everything is Isvara. So development of this understanding of God, of Isvara, only then will allow us to develop this other side of this science. That is the logistic, that is rational about it, but there is attitude, and the attitude is a byproduct of this knowledge, but it has to grow from this knowledge, which is an attitude of real deep gratitude. Because, if you really understand Isvara, Isvara is not only the one who gives the results of our actions, but he is sustaining us on a moment-to-moment basis. He's doing everything for us, He's putting us to sleep. God is amazing. And we need to develop this wisdom of this third eye that allows us to begin understanding what God is. And then we have karma yoga, the two sides working together. And then our growth is much more rapid and smooth. Okay? So we meet again next Monday. Isvara willing, of course. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnameva Vashishate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, everybody. It was very nice meeting together with you again. And I look forward for our next meeting.
Thank you, Arlindo.
Thank you all.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, Arlindo.
Thank you.